All right, let's look at our second lesson, the Pythagorean theorem, converse. So this is where we take our hypothesis and conclusion and reverse them. So we're still using Pythagorean theorem, but we're going to use it in a different way. So if you're given a triangle with sides A, B, and C, so if you take a look, and if you looked at C squared and set it equal to A squared plus B squared, which is what we know, and I'm only writing this way because it kind of helps put things in the right order when we work these problems. So if A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared, then the triangle is right. It's a right triangle, okay? So if the second one is if C squared is greater than A squared plus B squared, then we say our triangle is an obtuse triangle. It's obtuse. And it all has to do with C squared. So in the last one here, if C squared is less than A squared plus B squared, then we say that triangle is acute. So everything is based off of C squared. So if it's equal, it's right. If C squared is greater than A squared plus B squared, it's obtuse. And if C squared is less than A squared plus B squared, it's acute. So you can look at these pictures down below here that show us an example of each. Okay, when it's bigger, this angle C here now becomes bigger than 90, and over here it's less than 90, so it's going to be smaller. Now, in this problem right here, it's always keep C squared on the left to avoid confusion when you're classifying. Okay, you don't have to set it up when you're working out a Pythagorean theorem problem, but when you're classifying them, it is easiest to keep it on this left side. So one thing to first look at is you have to determine, is it a triangle? So we go back to where we looked at and we said that the side lengths of a triangle have to be greater than, the sum of those two has to be greater than the third side. So that's the first thing we have to do, is check to see, are these a triangle? So we're going to take our biggest side here, 9, and we're going to see, are the other two sides bigger? So we do 3 plus 7, that's going to give us 10, which is greater than 9. So yes, this is going to be a triangle. We can continue on. So next we want to classify it. So we're going to do 9 squared. We're going to take 3 squared and 7 squared. We want to see, I'm going to kind of put a couple dots here. We're going to kind of see what we get. We get 81. This is going to be 9. And this is going to be 7 squared, which is 49. So if we add these together, 81, and then 9 and 49 is going to give us 58. So 81 is bigger, which means our C squared is bigger than A squared plus B squared. And that means if you look at back up the top, that means this is going to be an obtuse triangle. So our answer is going to be obtuse because C squared is bigger. So it all comes down to C squared. So let's look at the second one. We have 20, 21, and 29. So that means that 29 is my biggest. So we're going to take 29 and we want to see if the other two added together, which we should be able to tell this real quick. 29 is obviously smaller than 41, so therefore, yes, it's a triangle. We can continue on. So we're going to take our largest side, 29, we're going to square it, and we're going to take the two smaller sides and square it, and see what we get. So 29 squared is 841, 20 squared is 400, and this becomes 441. Add them together, we get 841, and we get 841. So they're equal to each other, therefore, this is going to be a right triangle. So we circle the right triangle. All right, so you try the next two. Pause your video and come back to see how you did. All right, let's check. The first thing you should have done was to check to see, is this a triangle? So we got 16. We want to see that is 4 plus 11, going to be bigger. That's 15, 16. This is not bigger than C squared, our large side. So therefore, this is not a triangle. Therefore, we cannot go any further. We can't classify it because it's not a triangle. So let's go to the next one. So we would have done the same thing, 22. We want to see if 17 plus 17 is going to be bigger, which is 34 is bigger than 22. So therefore, it is a triangle. We can continue on and classify it. So we have 22 squared, and we're going to see if 17 squared plus 17 squared is going to be bigger than 22 squared. And 22 squared is 484. 17 squared is going to be 289. So we get 289 here. 484. And we're comparing it to 578, which 578 is bigger. So therefore, c squared is smaller than a squared plus b squared. So that means this is going to be acute. So our answer is an acute triangle. All right, let's try the next two. Pause the video, come back and check your answers when you're done. All right, for this one here, we're going to get 30, and we're going to see that after we add 18 and 24, we're going to get 42, which is bigger than 30, so therefore it does mark out. It's going to be a triangle. So now we're going to take 30 squared and see how it compares to 18 squared plus 24 squared. Remember, c is always the biggest. It's always one by itself. So as we square these values, we get 900. We have 18. That's going to be 324. 24 is going to be 576. Add them together, we get 900 equal to 900, which means that this is a right triangle. So our answer is a right triangle. Next one we'll check. We'll see we got 23. We want to see, are these 8 and 15 greater than? Well, that comes up to 23, and 23 is not greater than 23. So therefore, it is not a triangle at all. So we cannot classify it. All right, pause the video and try the last two. All right, let's see how we did. We got 39, and we're going to see if it is going to be 31 and 35, which we should know that real quick, that it's going to be a triangle because that's going to be 66. So therefore, it is a triangle. Now we're going to classify it by setting up Pythagorean theorem. And we're going to have 39 squared. We got 31 squared and 35 squared. 39 squared is 1521. And 31 is going to be 961, adding it to 1225. So 1521, and this gives me 2186, which means that this is going to be bigger, so c squared is smaller than a squared plus b squared, which means it's going to be acute. And the last one, we got 28, and we got 11 plus 19, which is going to give us 30. 30 is bigger than 28, so therefore it is a triangle. We can classify it. 28 squared, 11 squared, and 19 squared. So 28 squared is 784. 11 squared is 121. 19 squared is 361. So as we add those together, we get 482 and 784. So therefore, c squared is bigger than a squared plus b squared, which means it is obtuse. And so we circle obtuse, and that becomes our answer. So key things to remember when you are classifying. Put c squared on the left and use Pythagorean theorem to determine it. If it's c squared is equal to, it's a right triangle. If c squared is greater than a squared plus b squared, it's obtuse. And if c squared is less than a squared plus b squared, it is acute. And that's the end of the converse of Pythagorean theorem.